Sattvam rajastama iti Nirgunasya gunastraya Sthiti sarga nirodeshu Grihita mayaya vibhu Sattvam rajastama iti Nirgunasya gunastraya Sthiti sarga nirodeshu Grihita mayaya vibhu Sattvam rajastama iti Nirgunasya gunastraya Sthiti sarga nirodeshu Grihita mayaya vibhu Sattvam rajastama iti Nirgunasya gunastraya Sthiti sarga nirodeshu Grihita mayaya vibhu
Sattvam rajastama iti Nirgunasya gunastraya Sthiti sarga nirodeshu Grihita mayaya vibhu
Sattvam rajastama iti
Nirgunasya gunastraya Sthiti sarga nirodeshu Grihita mayaya vibhu
Sattvam rajastama
iti Nirgunasya gunastraya Sthiti sarga nirodeshu Grihita mayaya vibhu Sattvam rajastama iti Nirgunasya gunastraya Sthiti sarga nirodeshu Grihita mayaya vibhu.
Okay, so the word for word is Sattvam,
Sattvam,
the mode of goodness.
the mode of goodness.
Rajaha,
Rajaha,
the mode of good passion.
the mode of passion.
Tamaha,
Kamaha,
the mode of ignorance.
the mode of ignorance.
Iti,
Iti,
all these.
Nirgunasya,
Of the transcendence.
of the transcendence.
Gunatraya, are these qualities. I said that wrong. It's supposed to be are three qualities. Stiti, maintenance. Sarga, creation. Nirodeshu, instruction. Grihita, accepted. Mayaya, by the external energy. Vibho, of the Supreme. So the translation by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. The Supreme Lord is pure spiritual form, transcendental to all material qualities. Yet for the sake of the creation of the material world and its maintenance and annihilation, he accepts through his external energy the material modes of nature called goodness, passion, and ignorance. So this is still Lord Brahma speaking, right? Okay. So please repeat. The Supreme Lord
The Supreme Lord
is pure spiritual form,
is pure spiritual form,
transcendental to all material qualities,
transcendental to all material qualities,
yet for the sake
Yet
yet for the sake
of the creation
of the creation
of the material world
of the material world
and its maintenance and annihilation,
and its maintenance and annihilation,
he accepts
he accepts
through his external energy
through his external energy
the material modes
the material modes
of nature
of nature
called goodness, passion, and ignorance.
called goodness, passion, and ignorance.
So, Srila Prabhupada's divine purport, his emotional ecstasy, he referred to his purports to his emotional ecstasies. The Supreme Lord is the master of the external energy manifested by the three material modes, namely goodness, passion, and ignorance. And as the master of this energy, he is ever unaffected by the influence of such bewildering energy. The living entities, the jivas, however, are affected by or susceptible to being influenced by such modes of material nature. That is the difference between the Lord and the living entities. The living entities are subjugated by these qualities. Although originally the living entities are qualitatively one with the Lord. In other words, the material modes of nature, being products of the energy of the Lord, are certainly connected with the Lord, but the connection is just like that between the master and the servants. The Supreme Lord is the controller of the material energy, whereas the living entities who are entangled in the material world are neither masters nor controllers. Rather, they become subordinate to or controlled by such energy. Factually, the Lord is eternally manifested by his internal potency or spiritual energy, just like the sun and its rays in the clear sky. But at times, he creates the material energy as the sun creates a cloud in the clear sky. As the sun is ever increasingly unaffected by a spot of a cloud, so also the unlimited Lord is unaffected by the spot of material energy, manifested at times in the unlimited span of the Lord's rays of Brahmajyoti. So the verse again is the Supreme Lord is pure spiritual form, transcendental to all material qualities. Yet for the sake of the creation of the material world and its maintenance and annihilation, he accepts through his external energy the material modes of nature called goodness, passion, and ignorance. So there's really a lot to discuss. But I just want to mention that I want to leave about 5 or 7 minutes, because 2 weeks ago I mentioned this pastime with Prabhupada and this devotee, Bhakta, who was Maharishi's servant. And he came to Atlanta. So Kaivalya asked where it was, how you could hear it. I don't know where it is on tape, but I have the transcription of it here. And I can read it to you after we just talk a little bit about this. So, Om Gyantimarandasya Gyanandana Salakaya Chaksurpamanitam Jena Tasmai Shri Guru Jai Srila Prabhupada. So, I've been on this this whole discussion about creation, maintenance, and annihilation. And last week I brought a copy of this. If you remember, 2 weeks ago, you were giving a class and something about, feels like, anything exciting to say.
Well, that's because I was exhausted.
Yeah, okay, sorry. So I know the feeling. Sometimes when I get exhausted, I act differently. And then I got this hard copy of 2 blogs that this Bhakta Art does. I can give you the address of the blog if you want to look at it. And the first one's called Escaping the Material World, and the other one is called, has something to do with transfiguration, like the universal form. But Jesus also had a transfiguration on the mountain with 3 of his disciples. And it's a very interesting analysis, and if you know all of the doctrines of Catholicism, it probably means a lot more to those people. And his preaching is very strong. But he quotes, he doesn't say, unfortunately, Bhakta Art, Prabhu, I really love what you did, but when you put the quotes of Srila Prabhupada, please, when you hear this, please put the verse and chapter. Because it's obviously from the 2nd canto, and it's from a purport that Srila Prabhupada wrote, and it specifically dealt with the point that we were talking about at the end of your last class I heard you give, where actually Prabhupada's saying that most people want to rush to the more intimate pastimes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, not realizing that all of his pastimes are pure transcendence, transcendentally ecstatic sound vibrations, and have the same effect. It's all absolute. And hearing of the creation, the maintenance, and the annihilation of the material energy, as Parikshit Maharaj asked Sukadeva Goswami, and as before him, Narada Muni requested from Lord Brahma, he wanted to know, are you the creator? Because all he could see was Brahma. Are you the creator? And he said, no, I've created, but only what I've been given to create with by my master, the supreme cause of all causes, Sarva Karna Karna. And now he's describing all of that. And so so by hearing these sound vibrations, these pure transcendental sound vibrations, have the same transcendental effect on the soul as if you were hearing very intimate pastimes with Krishna and the cowherd boys, or Krishna and the gopis. It's not like it's less. There's no lesser or greater. It may be more confidential, but one has to be purified in order to really enter into the pure confidential pastimes of the Lord. So all of it's blissful, all of it's ecstatic, and it's interesting that throughout the Bhagavatam, and especially now when we get to the 3rd canto, they're going to go back over the creation, maintenance, and annihilation from different points of view to even deeper and a more complete understanding of it. So it's obviously the previous acharyas and Krishna himself feels it's extremely important. And while meditating on this, I started to, somehow or other, Krishna directed me, these, what do you call them, algorithms. I don't know how they work with the computer. Sometimes I'll just be thinking about something, and all of a sudden something will appear on a box. It's like, I'm wondering if they hear my, something.
They do now.
But I didn't even say this. I wasn't even, maybe I was, I don't know. But all of a sudden, I saw these TED Talks on quantum physics. And there was one about, why does the universe exist? Or does it exist? Exactly. It's like an 11-minute, 12-minute stand-up comic routine by this very erudite physicist. And he's trying to entertain them, but it's extremely, and wasn't there a purport just recently? It says that all they can do is talk nonsense. They're very educated and using very high-sounding words, but the essence of everything they're saying is so nonsensical, and you feel sorry for them because they have. For myself, they have superior intellect. Their natural intelligence, their natural physical, brain power, and an ability to analyze things is far stronger, and they have a gift that I don't have, yet they refuse to accept the possibility that God exists. They do mention God. He started off by saying, okay, so we have to accept if there is a God, the Judeo-Christian version of things is that there's God and there's nothing. And then God plus nothing equals creation.
God plus nothing equals creation.
That's one of their mathematical equations.
That's a new one?
Well, I'm going to just briefly touch on some of these things, and then I really want to get to the heart of the matter. But it's actually, it's a rabbit hole that you go down, and it's really to sharpen your skills of presentation to the modern educated scientists of the world. I saw this whole thing on the quantum field, and and one point that this particular person I was listening to just wanted to mention is that he says, this sounds perfect, God plus nothing equals creation. So that sounds perfect if you're a Buddhist. And if you think about it, the Buddhists, they say, once we free ourselves of our desires, and we can attain the state of nirvana, and that means nothingness. So this is actually perfect for Buddhism. The perfection is to enter into nothingness. So because they're saying we're only desiring, and there's some very interesting quotes from his thing where it says there's a quote from a very famous. His name is Arthur Schopenhauer, and he says, why is there existence? Why do we exist? Why is there not nothing? And if you don't start to wonder about the contingency of your existence or the contingency of the world, then you are mentally deficient. He makes this challenge. In other words, contingency means that you want what is causing a contingency. Well, my plans are contingent on whether or not my car works, whether or not the gas station will have gas for my car. There's so many different contingencies. So why this universe exists, there's causes, there's things that will help the universe to function. So they're saying we should try to understand that. But then, and they're saying the most sublime and deepest question you can pose, and this is from another famous philosopher, says perhaps the greatest philosopher of the 20th century, and I'm not going to bother with his name, is not how it exists, but does it exist at all? And these are the kinds of things that they're actually thinking about in the quantum physics and amongst the scientists, and they have these very deep discussions. Like was one physicist says he's one of the greatest physicists ever, and he says I don't know how it comes, how comes the quantum means they realize that energy is particles, and particles that make, but actually it's a wave. The first realization they had was that energy, in the like say radiation or sunlight, they realized that it's actually made up of small particles. It's not just one few, but then they realized that those particles, through various experiments over a few hundred years, or at least 1.5 centuries, they realized that those particles act like a wave. And they don't know why. And they also have a theory of what's called entanglement, where the particles are connected, and they can't understand why they're so connected. And actually, when you start to meditate on all of this, they're really like they're describing how when we get into this material world, we're put into a prison house. And what we're studying right now is the energies of the Lord, the inferior energies, which imprison us. But it's our misuse of our independence. In other words, we have to learn how to desire. The original sin here is improper desire. So we have to learn how to make our desire one with the Lord. Sarvadhamam parityajam mamekam saranam vajam aham tvam sarvapapayo mokshisami masucha. By surrendering to the Supreme Personality of God, by surrendering to His representative, then you make yourself one with Krishna, and then in the sense of desire. And then you act only for the Lord. You think only of the Lord. You pray to the Lord. You bow down to the Lord. You talk about the Lord. You tell other people about the Lord. You want to hear about the Lord and His pastimes and how He says this world is created. And they're trying to minutely discover what, if there is a God, then, because there's a lot of discussion about this. And actually, there's one fellow, he actually has written a book saying that something can come from nothing. And it's not a big bang. He says that there's a void, and then there's a slight fluctuation in the void. Just a little burp. It's just a little burp. That's all it takes, just a little burp in the void. And from that, all of these systems are coming. But the problem with it is, even though he's saying he's an atheist, he basically describes cosmic laws that are basically, you have to live by these cosmic laws. So what he's basically, it's a pseudo-religion. He's saying these laws are divine, that we must understand that these are the laws of the energy that has been, accidentally created. And so they can't seem to get away from God. And they're trying to, and what is ultimately happening, they're starting to realize they're getting further and further down to the more smaller levels. And they're actually saying that there's a possibility that there are, in the quantum field, on the quantum level of things, which is, smaller than the atoms, smaller than the electrons, there's particles. They know are there. One of them is called the God particle. They just don't know about the antimatter. They don't know about the spirit soul. They don't know about Paramatma. They think there's not any difference between this and me. They can't understand this. In their idea, this is made up of particles, and it's a wave of particles, and so am I. For some reason, though, I'm animate. Like Descartes, that philosopher, I think from the 17th century, Descartes was saying, I think, therefore I am. Okay? So, does that mean that I exist because I think? Does that mean that this doesn't exist? Because it's not thinking? They don't know what is life. They have no idea. And that's why studying, through the Bhagavatam, what is creation and how it's created, we have an understanding that can help them if they would listen. So, I was just going to try to find this one other thing. So why is there existence? But they think that we're just 5 Einsteins away from understanding why there's existence and how we can, properly utilize. Also, but what they say is, on that quantum level, there can either be, nothing, and then there can be one universe, or it's possible on the quantum level, because of the law of entanglement, which is, again, karma, acting in various ways, like the banyan tree. Krishna describes this material world as a banyan tree. No one knows which is going up, which is going down. This unlimited, immutable, entangling cause and effect. And it's very subtle. You're bound up in this material world of karma, and Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, I think it is, that the laws of karma are very intricate. It's best just to know what is karma or pious activities, what is vikarma or sinful activities, and what is nishkarma akama, which is transcendental activities. Trying to undo the knot is impossible. But if you see, if you're able to hear from the proper authority, you can understand how this whole creation is under his direction. So they're getting down to the point where they actually say there is the possibility of unlimited universes all existing simultaneously. And even one of those universes could be where there is no death, there's no disease, there's no aging. They realize that there's a possibility that there's hellish levels, there's earthly levels, there's heavenly levels, and then there's even the level of Vaikuntha. They see it. Mathematically they see it, but they don't have the eyes. You can't see God. Here's Lord Brahma. I wanted to bring it to this very interesting pastime of Lord Brahma and Krishna and the Cowherd Boys. I think it really kind of, in a beautiful story, tells you exactly. Here's Lord Brahma, the most intelligent person in the universe. The goddess of fortune serves him. The goddess of learning, Saraswati, serves him. She's the source. She teaches everyone knowledge. He is her master. He has studied all the Vedas, and the Vedas is Krishna describing how his creation works. And he doesn't properly understand Krishna, and the proof is this beautiful story of the Cowherd Boys and Krishna. And I just want to start by reading this one section, where first of all, I want you to just think about that the person who's speaking here is the Creator, and that he's describing something he's created with his cowherd boyfriends. He's suggesting a place where we can sit down and have lunch. He says, this is after he saved the cowherd boys from the Aghasura demon. He says, my dear friends, just see how this spot is very nice for taking lunch and playing on the soft, sandy Jamuna bank. You can see how the lotus flowers in the water are beautifully blown, and how they distribute their fragrance all around. The chirping of the birds, along with the cooing of peacocks, surrounded by the whispering of the leaves in the trees, combined and present sound vibrations that echo one another. And this enriches the beautiful scenery created by the trees here. Let us have our lunch in this spot, because it is already late, and we are feeling hungry. Let the calves remain near us, and let them drink water from the Jamuna, while we engage in our lunch taking. The calves may engage in eating the soft grasses that are in this spot. Now, this is Krishna's idyllic, bucolic creation. This is what he thinks. This is what he wants. And everything he just described, the flowers, the water, the sand, the grasses, the trees, the birds, they're all his servants. They're all glorifying Krishna. And they're put there by him. This is what he wants for him and his friends and his calves. They're going to sit and discuss. The description of the scene, you can see that we're running out of time already, but the description of the scene, it describes that Krishna is like in the center of a lotus flower. He's the whirl of the lotus flower, and all the boys are petals. And they're all sitting and having relationships with him, they take the leaves and the bark from the trees and make plates, and they're sitting there on the grass, and he's in the center, and they're all facing him. And they're looks like the petals of a lotus flower. And they're having different talks and laughing and joking. And the beautiful sound of the birds, the fragrance from the lotus flower, and the water gently flowing by just creates the perfect atmosphere. And the calves are starting to eat the grasses. And Lord Brahma saw this. Aghasura was one of the most powerful demons. The demigods, just by hearing his name, would shudder in fear. And Now, Brahma sees there's a boy down here named Krishna. Now, he's talking here in the Bhagavatam to Narada Muni that he's not the creator. He understands about Vishnu. And, I don't know if he actually mentions Krishna in the Bhagavatam, but he understands that he's not the controller, he's not the creator. But he's wondering about who is this Krishna down there? And here's another point. This is Gokula. And Gokula is Goloka in the material world. So the demigods are looking at, they see Krishna and the cowherd boys and the calves, which is actually Goloka, but brought here to the material world. But they don't see it. They see it, but they don't see it. They don't fully understand it. And later on in this story, and I think there's a spot here where, after, we know the story, how Krishna, he expands, the calves are stolen. He wants to test them. He wants to see what's going on here. And so he steals all the calves. He steals all the cowherd boys. Now Krishna, every one of these boys has their own voice, their own tenor, the tenor of their voice. They have their own facial expressions, body types. They're all uniquely different. And Krishna, in this case Vishnu, becomes each and every boy, sounds exactly like them, moves just like they do. And then he becomes each one of the calves, and the mothers are all fooled, but they feel so much more affection. So for a whole year, they're getting to offer their breast milk or their udders to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And their love is increasing more and more. And there's so many stories where, like, at one point, towards the end of the year, some cows are up on top of the Govardhan Hill. And they see the calves below. But they're not their calves, but they were seeing Krishna in the form of a calf. And the cowherd men were very proud of being able to control the cows, but they couldn't control them. And they just spontaneously start running down the hill, the mountain, to see the calves, to smell them, to offer them their milk. And so Balaram's even wondering, what is going on here? I knew there must be something going on for the last year. But he actually he's Balaram's Krishna, but he's also covered by a Yogamaya in a sense. And he's thinking maybe it's some powerful demigod who's pulling some trick here. So anyway, he gets to, everyone starts to realize when Brahma comes to return the cows, he sees. Let me see if it says it right here. The description of how Krishna reveals himself in the form of the cowherd boys is absolutely exquisite. It says, the influence but first of all, there's this very good example that's given here by Prabhupada. The influence of his mystic power appeared like snow in darkness or a glowworm in the daytime. During the night's darkness, the glowworm can show some glittering power. And the snow piled up on the top of a hill or on the ground can shine during the daytime. But at night, the snow has no silver glitter, nor does the glowworm have any illuminating power during the daytime. So he's comparing Brahma's powers to that. But if you've ever seen, snow when there's been sort of an ice over it, sort of like it's been a rain ice, and it's like very crusty.
It's like hoarfrost.
Yeah, and if your light hits it, if it's at night, I was driving once, and it was this whole long side of the road, there was a bush just covered with this kind of frosty snow ice, and the light would hit it, and each drop appeared to be like, an effulgent, little jiva or Paramatma. You could just get the sense that yes, this whole energy is just made up of jivas and Paramatma all around. It's like a slight glimpse. And what's really being described is that they see Krishna in Vrindavan and in Gokula, but they're not qualified to go to Goloka, but they're seeing this, and yet it's described, because I've run out of time really to finish. It's already 8:30 practically. So I just encourage you all to read this description of how Krishna looks to Lord Brahma, and then how he realizes he's been covered by Mahamaya, and now the curtain's been lifted, and he's seeing through Yogamaya. He's half seeing and half not still being covered. And so, because like here it's describing in this verse today that, he's affected, or he's allowing himself to come in contact with this material energy. But in this description in the Krishna book, it describes that Brahma sees that he is the source and the master of the mode of passion and the mode of ignorance. He's not within it. And you can see all of the demigods and all the jivas and all the little pieces of straw and all the little insects and birds and all the animals are dancing around the Supreme Personality of Godhead in this vision. So they don't really, even so when Krishna comes, so what I'm trying to say here is, in my own, ignorant way, I'm trying to explain, I don't actually have the language to say it, but my realization is that our vision of Gokula is greater than that of those who were there, because we're seeing it through pure sound vibration. And we have the proper understanding being given to us simultaneously. What they're seeing, like when Krishna and Balaram are entering the wrestling match, everybody's seeing them in different ways, according to their desires, according to their qualifications, according to their relationships. So what people are seeing, or the demigods are seeing, when they look down at Krishna and the cowherd boys, they don't necessarily understand fully what's going on here. Occasionally Krishna lifts the veil and they get a partial vision of it. But actually the spiritual world, Goloka Vrindavan, is on the planet. And they're seeing that. And they actually, he still has his material body. And he's now in Vrindavan. How is that? What's going on here? It's all this very special performance, special mercy by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and we get to see it through transcendental sound vibration. And so the art of hearing, the art of listening, needs to be cultivated so that you can fully be injected with that pure transcendental knowledge. And your heart will become completely filled with transcendental love for the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So, if you don't mind, it's not exactly the way I worked it out, but I didn't really know what I was going to do. But if you I didn't. But I wanted to just read this conversation, if that's all right. Is that all right with anybody? Huh? We're all right? Just say yes.
Yes.
Okay. So, this happened in 1975 in New Panahati, in Atlanta. And so I'll try to find. So here's Satru. It says, there's a conversation going on in Balavantis, Tripurari, Sudakirti, and then this is Bhakta. And so Satru says, this boy is Bhakta Dug, and he was a personal secretary for Maharishi for 2 years. Prabhu goes, oh. Satrup says he traveled all over with him. Not all over. He traveled all over with him. And one day, he was a very good student. And one day Maharishi said, if you really want to know the highest truth, it's Krishna consciousness. And then he left and he came and joined our team. And then there's a lot of laughter. Prabhupada said, Maharishi said like this? And Doug says, yes, he did say that. It took me a while to make the transition, but with Krishna's mercy, I saw the way through to become Krishna And so then, other devotees, unfortunately, at that point, when you're in a room like that with Srila Prabhupada, there's so many devotees, if you read these things, you can see how silly it is in a way. They're all immediately trying to jump in and say, yes, Prabhupada, I know this thing happened over here. Blah, blah. And meanwhile, this is a person who actually, was with Maharishi, and this real Maharishi finally revealed to him that the highest state is Krishna consciousness, although he's been sort of not wanting to admit it. And but other devotees start speaking, so I want to skip over all the rest of the conversations because they're just trying to they want Prabhupada's attention, but it kind of takes away from what's really going on here.
Mm.
So here, Prabhupada asks. There's 4 or 5 devotees talking, and then finally Prabhupada looks to Doug again and says, when you were with Maharishi, come here. I joined the Maharishi in 1969, and at that time I was living in Washington, D.C., and his national director came, gave a lecture, and then said that they needed some help because they didn't have a center there. So I organized the movement out of my parents' house. I had the center, and I established lectures at all the colleges and started the movement there. And later on, they finally sent some full-time teachers, and they established a center there. And then I started to be with Maharishi and his different courses and doing extensive meditations for long periods of time. And then eventually, he formed a committee. This was in 1971-72. He started to form a college called MIU, Maharishi International University, and he started to invite educators. He wanted to, and he also had this, and Prabhupada says, MIU means Maharishi International University. So he started to formulate a curriculum, and he was trying to present Vedic studies in Western terms. And so he formed this council of the executive, called the Executive Council, and it was called the 108. It didn't have 108 people, but this was what he called us. Prabhupada, 100, what? And it's 108. He called it the 108, but the official term was the Executive Council, and that's what I was with. Prabhupada, how many students are there? How many students do this meditation? No, the university. And then he goes on a long discussion about that. And I want to get to the real. So
that's the college that
Iowa
goes to, right?
Yeah, well, it's in Iowa, yeah.
Yeah.
So, so here he says, and he. It seemed to me he'd get more and more depressed if people weren't actually reaching the states that he was talking about. It didn't seem like he was satisfied with the advancement people were making, and certainly he wasn't answering the questions, because all the time I was asking him, what is the highest truth? And when he talked to God, I would say, who is God? And we'd ask him, who is Krishna? And what about this Krishna consciousness movement? And it was word juggling. He kind of evaded our questions and studied our elan, our mood. Those questions kept coming up. Somehow he kept us from going into too much detail about it. But eventually I didn't see him for a few days. This was when I was in the mountains with him. Some other people, and we were making up his curriculums for the college. And he was doing some transcriptions on the Brahma Sutras, and he came out. And he was in a very solemn mood. And he said, we asked him what he had realized. What truths had he realized from the Brahma Sutra? And he said, Krishna consciousness is the highest state of consciousness. So I left shortly after that. I feel that I could have been chanting all those years, making some progress. Then he goes on to describe how he only translated the Bhagavad Gita up to the 6th chapter, and because after the 6th chapter it gets a little too obvious that Krishna is saying that he's God. So anyway, and but he says that he's his master. He's coming from the Sankaracharya line, the Sankaracharya disciplic succession, and but he finally told him that it's Krishna consciousness. And then I had certain conversations with him as others that when he said that was the discussion about, the Hare Krishna movement. And he said, oh yeah, of course, that was, he definitely had respect for Srila Prabhupada, but he was trying to keep his own flock together. But he would get really depressed at certain points, and he couldn't hide it. So they were saying, well, what are you realizing? What's happening? And he said, well, because he had different levels of states of consciousness, and he finally realized that if I'm going to do this right, I'm going to have to teach Krishna consciousness. But he didn't want to do that. He never surrendered to that. So he got more involved in science, because he actually has a degree in physics. He has a master's degree in physics. Maharishi does. And at least at that point in time, I don't know if he went on. So he avoided the transcendental. He got more involved in science, and which was interesting because at this time, in 1975, is when Prabhupada formally met with. He already knew Bhakti Swarup Damodar, but Swarup Damodar was there. Dr. Richard Thompson was there, who became Siddhartha, a devotee by the name of Madhava Das. Not the same Madhava here. And he was a mathematician. I'm not sure if Brahmatirtha was there, but the beginnings of and Rupanuga was actively involved. So the beginnings of the BI, the Bhaktivedanta Institute, took place formally in several discussions at that time in Atlanta. So this discussion about science was going on. So that was kind of an interesting point that here's Bhakti Dog telling us about Maharishi, and to avoid Krishna consciousness, he was diving into science and his meditation as well. So, but Prabhupada was trying to teach us, for you people who have already achieved, most of them had already achieved, they're all PhDs. Sarabhuta was math, and I think Madhava was also PhD in math, maybe just master's, and then Swarup Damodar. This was a little different, and but he was a PhD, and so he wanted them to use that to then bring them to the high state. Because if you hear these discussions about, and I don't advocate everybody wasting their time listening to this, but if you have some interest, some little bit, if we're in the mood of being able to see that what they're taking is the minutiae of the material energy and trying to avoid, accepting an authority other than their own intellect and their own speculative powers, and trying to speculate on what is the truth. And there's so many things where you can just see that what's blocking them is that they don't understand the anti-material energy factor, the transcendental factor, the controller factor. They're limited by just what they can see. But most of this they can't see, but they see the effects of it. They see the effects of their studies. So, anyway, I hope I didn't confuse anyone. So, anything anyone would like to say? Yeah.
In the beginning, you said that sometimes they are coming up with this equation, God plus nothing equals creation.
Yeah.
Actually, that's exactly true, because there isn't anything else except God and his energies.
Well, but, like Prabhupada often said, there's no such thing as nothing. I mean, Prabhupada said, just like when there's the sun, automatically the sun makes. So, there's Krishna, and automatically everything exists. There's no nothing. But but he does take the material energy, the inferior energy, which is there, and then he goes and lays down, he goes to sleep. Goes to sleep. And then he dreams us. Mm-hmm. He dreams this whole thing out for us. And we're dreaming too. It's a big dream, to sleep, to dream. Something like Shakespeare says. Anyway, yeah, yes.
Quite a few people have experienced when you're on the internet that if you search one thing and another thing and something else pops up. It's a lot. Algorithms are basically like a recipe. Yeah. So if you look up lemons and then you look up something on sugar and then you look up water, then the algorithm will say, you're thinking about lemonade. And so it's like, how did it do that?
Yeah, but sometimes it has nothing to do with that.
and
You know, I
it's-
mean, it just comes, like,
I
I'll tell you,
know.
here's
It seems,
but, you know, I was talking to Mother Padma 2 weeks ago in Harinam, and she advised vitamin D3. Or vitamin D. And there's a difference between D and 2. So I just told Colleen that maybe some would help us if we started taking vitamin D. That's all I did. I didn't do anything on the internet.
oh, you didn't touch it.
I didn't touch it.
Right.
Next morning, there's a discussion of the symptoms of a vitamin D deficiency.
Right.
Where did that come from?
It's listening. This
Well,
system
it may have
called,
come from your age and that it
But all of a
probably...
sudden,
No,
just at that
it's-
moment,
it
after I
listens.
just finished saying it,
just like we get on the phone and say,
is there
hello.
coincidence?
No. Just like we get on the phone and say, hello, are you there? There's a microphone in this.
Yeah.
And so I've experienced that too. There was a discussion about something and all of a sudden
Have you
it popped
experienced
up.
that lately? We just were talking about something, all of a sudden it was on the
It
computer?
was on the computer.
Yeah.
Some people have a system, Siri,
Yeah.
and if you say, oh, I better not say it. If you say, hello, Siri, then the computer will say, yes, how can I help you? And it's always on. So it does hear us.
Yeah, but there are times though I haven't said it, I'm thinking something,
Mm-hmm.
and then it's there. And it's not necessarily something I've been searching or anything like that. It's, it's very interesting.
Yeah.
I don't know how that,
But
what was really interesting, the whole discussion
It's-
with quantum physics, is that Einstein, because the quantum physics says everything is based on probability. In other words, almost like saying chance. But there are laws, there's mathematical laws that govern chance, like the games of chance, gambling. And so there are laws governing everything. But Einstein was saying, when this fellow Niels Bohr first started discussing quantum, and his whole description of the thing, as Einstein's famous quote was, hey, you can't go around saying that God is playing dice with the universe. There are very distinct reasons, cause and effect, why things are happening. And so there is still this challenge going on between, and it looks like right now Niels Bohr is, leading the way, because so far this quantum physics, they say that it's the reason why we have that cell phone, why we have computers, internet. But the two things that are on the horizon that they're working on is quantum computers, which would be faster than you can ever even imagine, and transportation, like beam me up, Scotty. But see, they don't understand about the anti-material energy. So if they were going to beam, like say if they learned how to beam up this, but you have to break down all the little particles and the waves, they might be able to accomplish that. But how are they going to figure? They don't know that there's an anti-material energy. They don't know there's a super soul. So what would come out?
Dead body.
Actually, one of them said, "I don't want to see it."
Xerox copy.
But they feel that that's because they actually say there's two theories of quantum, or many theories, but one's like there's nothingness, and this is really just nothing. Everything here is just nothing, or there's one limited universe, or there's the possibility, and one universe is winning out over the others possibilities.
Parallel.
Or there's parallel, unlimited universes, and this may even be, therefore, there's the possibility that there is a universe where there's no death, no old age, no war, no anxiety, no ending. In other words, there's the possibility of Vaikuntha. According to
It's
it.
parallel to
It's parallel. Well, it's not, that it's a very interesting discussion. So, but I'd like to thank also Bhakta Art for his work that he has been doing on the internet with his explanations of, like this specifically, one escaping the material world is a very fascinating discussion. And if anybody's interested, I can give you the blog address and you can see what he's talking about. He's quoting from the Bhagavatam all the time. And then he's talking to Catholics, or at least theologians, Catholic theologians. Yes.
Just one more word on the algorithms. There are many different types of algorithms.
Yeah.
And one is called backtracking, one's greedy algorithm, one is divide and conquer algorithm, one is dynamic programming algorithms, and on and on. Recursive algorithms. It's like a formula that supposedly exists that the outcome can be predicted by the inputs.
Right. Well, actually, right now, our lives are being controlled by those.
And actually,
And
karma.
Wall Street is being controlled by it.
What would you say karma is like an algorithm?
It
You
is.
did this action, you did that action, and there's a predictive outcome.
And that's why they say there's the theory. It's not a theory. It's the law of entanglement.
Well, algorithms are becoming so, the science is becoming so advanced that soon it'll put even a lot of doctors out of work,
Right.
and a lot of attorneys out of work, because you can feed into the computer
Right.
a case and it'll tell you exactly how to argue that case. And a top-notch lawyer won't need so many other lawyers
Right,
to assist him
to
in
research.
the case.
That's
And the
how
same
they
with
do it.
doctors. You'll go in and medicine will develop to the extent that everything will be specific to a certain individual. You'll go in and it'll scan you, and algorithms will figure out exactly what you need, and your medicine will be made according to your needs.
That's actually Ayurvedic.
Yeah, custom.
That's Ayurvedic, actually.
Yeah.
Ayurvedic is based on that's why they do your pulse.
Mm-hmm.
And I was amazed. This one, Pajabali's, Prabhupada's disciple passed away a few years. Her brother-in-law, he was from India, and he was a really good Ayurvedic doctor. He just did my pulse. He told me everything about me. He told me what I ate. He told me about my what I do with how I make money and how I use it. Basically describes someone who's heavily influenced by the mode of passion. Is what he described. And it was amazing. He said, "You make money very well, but you also spend it." I said, "I'm married."
Well, getting rid of all the lawyers might not be a bad idea. I don't know about the doctors, but there's that line in King Lear. First we kill all the lawyers. So, we're gonna be good without those.
Well, it's something called the Merck manual that's like an algorithm too. Like, is there a temperature? Is there a fever? You go this way. Is there no fever? You go that way. And you come to a conclusion too. So it's like almost an automatic.
That's why the doctors
MER.
meet with you a bit, and then they'll say, "I'll be right back," and they go away, and then they come back with answers. How do they do that, or why do they go away? You just, okay, doctor goes away.
They went to look at the Merck manual.
Yeah.
Or it's on the computer now. But
Well,
what
I
you're going to say is it's
remember-
going to be just a
At
computer.
one point, I worked in hospitals before I was a devotee, and I remember when this particular thing happened. But I was sitting in one patient's room, and there was 3 doctors in the hallway, and they were talking about another case. And they said, "Well, what do you think?" It's the ability to diagnose. It's a dietitian or someone who diagnoses.
Gnostic.
That is the real key. And so you had one doctor, Dr. A, says, "Well, I think it's acute so-and-so." Really? That's exactly opposite what I thought. I thought it was just the opposite. He needed more of that. I said, "Really?" And the third one saying, "I think you're both wrong." And they're both, these are people that have gone to school for like 12, 16 years, and they didn't have a clue.
Well, what they're finding out is that the computers are more successful in their diagnosis than the doctors.
Yeah.
See, for example, radiology is going to be, pretty soon there won't be radiologists.
Right.
Because the computers can read the scans better than the doctors. The doctors are 70% correct in reading the scans, but they found that the computers are 95% correct.
Better eyesight.
And so it's just a matter of time before they start to implement it.
Well,
And they found out exactly why the computer could read. There were certain reasons, which I don't remember right now, that the computer could read Whereas the doctors couldn't see the same colors that the computer could see.
Right. That's,
The
you know,
the
that- like,
sensitivity.
you don't have the eyes to see.
Right.
And that is the point I missed as saying at the end of the class, is that Bhakjanam Avijananti, that by bhakti, by devotion, and not by speculation, not by studying and reading, but you need to study the scriptures, and you need to hear them, you need to listen, completely absorbed, without motives, without being influenced by passion or ignorance or even goodness. Hear in complete humility. And because Krishna is not something you can categorize and put in a box. He's ever increasing. His energies are ever increasing. So it's a constant growth. So, but by bhakti, that's how you see. That's how you learn to see. You have, and then your eyes are transformed. But the other thing I was going to see, what you said was, can't remember now. Yeah, the computers thing. So, anyway, yeah. So, yeah, it was. What did you just say about the computers? That they can see what we can't see. Yeah, that's the point. And we had an experience recently, a couple of years ago. Colleen went in for an X-ray, and the first X-ray, just the first glance, look at it, it didn't see anything wrong. But then if you brought it in closer and saw the other, they can make it more in depth. They could see, there's a spur right there. There's a bone spur. They couldn't see it initially. So they'll just glance at something. They're very busy. They've seen all kinds of things and all kinds of problems, and they want to get out of it because it can be very. We have this one doctor. He's an internist, and he doesn't want to look inside your body. He finds the whole thing.
He's very squeamish.
He's very squeamish.
How did he get that?
Hey, blood.
Well, after a while, and if you're doing, surgery, when you cut open the body, there's some very, very unpleasant aromas are coming out. I mean, it's like I remember Rita Anand used to give this example all the time. Is that you see this cute little puppy dog, and he's so wonderful, and he's so cute. Then you driving down the road and you see, there he is. He's been run over by a car, and I don't look at it. It's disgusting. It's covered by. It's just a covering. What we really are is that soul within, where we're in body, and that's the thing. Krishna, he's in the material world, but he's not embodied. It said this verse. That was the main thing I should have said in the very beginning of the verse. It says that the Supreme Lord, is pure spiritual form. He's unembodied. We're all embodied, and we're working with limited assets.
That's an interesting thing. I had an exchange with my Christian brother. It got me thinking. I was thinking about how the Bible story of creation, we accept it, but it's all symbolic to us. We have a real understanding of it. When Adam and Eve got sent out of the spiritual world, and they got given animal skins to cover their nakedness, we're wearing animal skins. This is mammal skin, and it needs to eat, sleep, mate, and defend.
Right.
So
We're Dvipada Pasu.
So we're in animal skins. What'd you say?
Dvipada Pasu.
What's-
Two-legged animals.
Yeah, so we're souls wearing animal skins. So it really is the
The
same.
four
thing
regular
as-
principles are meant to bring us to human life.
Yeah. So the Bible story of creation is just what we say, but it's so allegorical in style that they don't understand.
Yeah, and that was another thing that I found. This is really fascinating. The guy was because he was like for physics people who were in quantum physicists. He was like a stand-up comedian, but he was one of them, and he was cracking these jokes. And what if God wonders, where did I come from? But then he says, but God would speak in Old English, right? Where frometh I come? But no, God, we know the language of God. It's Sanskrit. It's not Old English. Yes, I'm sorry.
Oh, the computer thing, I just wanted to mention that the computers are advanced because of the assimilation of knowledge. When all that knowledge is fed into the computer, then it can sort through that knowledge a lot quicker than the human brain and give us an answer. So where there is no knowledge on a particular disease or a particular thing, the computer can't do anything until the researchers find the information,
Yeah.
and then they can put it into computer language, and computers then can get answers based on this information a lot quicker than human beings can sort through it. For example, back in the 70s when computers were new, it wasn't unusual for some chess master to defeat a computer.
Right.
It's not possible today. Just recently there was a prodigy Chinese boy, prodigy for video or computer games. Never been defeated from the time he was a little kid. Defeat anyone. So they put him up against the deep learning computer, and he completely froze. It defeated him 3 times to the extent he couldn't make a move, and he just lost his ability to think. Something like when Lord Chaitanya
defeated
Vijay.
Vijay.
So that's the asset that Krishna is giving to humanity through technology, that you can put. Once you get the information in it, then it can sort through it a lot quicker. So maybe they will come to the spiritual sky with their information.
Well, but it's interesting if you listen to it and you start actually meditate on what's being said. They don't realize it, but because they haven't studied the Srimad Bhagavatam, they're actually, it's leading them. Krishna is leading them towards him. But they won't be able to see him unless they develop bhakti. But but they'll just constantly just go, down this rabbit hole, down that rabbit. Then this will be a dead end. And you waste your whole life.
They'll be like a banyan tree with no end.
Yeah, exactly.
It's
Completely.
material.
But they're telling us that actually there is subtle energies that are binding us. And we're bound up. And then actually, over and over again, if you read these different, I get free from sinful reaction, I get cut free from my bondage to this material world. It's true. We're in a banyan tree. We are completely, if you actually could see what's really happening, all the different energies, we'd be like, we're caught in a net, like a web. The spider example is the perfect one. I think that was in a purport recently, or a verse, where Krishna was being compared to the spider.
And the tar baby, that's another good one.
Yeah. But
it's a different from that verse. It was
yeah.
web that I can't remember the sloka right
But-
now. It was way back, like number 5.
So the tar baby is slightly different. It's true in terms of the entanglement, but what I want to say about the web is the mysticism of that sometimes you'll be walking down a country road and you'll just see a little spider floating right in front of you. He's not even a tree. He's come down. And then all of a sudden, just from his mouth. And he's able to create this intricate web. If you accidentally walk into it, it's like, oh.
Yeah, you get bound, but the spider doesn't. That was the comparison of Brahma. Brahma could create it all by.
But he's also bound.
That was 4-6-43, I think.
But I think you brought it up once in the class. The classic example from modern
this chapter.
popular culture was back in the 30s with W.C. Fields and flypaper. He's trying to golf.
He's trying 2-5. 2-5.
Yeah. The transcendental knowledge is pervading little by little the atmosphere of our culture.
That's right. That's sound vibration. And the more this is distributed through book distribution or through the chanting of the holy name publicly, or even this chanting japa every day, that sound vibration is permeating throughout the ether and it's affecting everyone. And so gradually, this atmosphere will be purified. And probably, I remember early on in the early 70s, we always had this concept that, only it would take 1 to 2, maybe 3% of the population. That's all. If you just imagine if you had 2% of the population pure devotees, I don't know what that would be, but I know it would be several hundred million. And that's a lot. I mean, right now they talk about how 0.001% is controlling the wealth. And then how much but they don't have that much control. But if there was 1% of the population who are pure devotees, empowered, what would happen? I mean, Prabhupada said we could control the whole atmosphere. Because we are surrendered to the controller. Not that we're controllers, but we're servants of the controllers, of the controller, the controller. There's, the various Ishwaras. Brahma's the greatest Ishwara in the universe, but he's being controlled. And that's what Narada Muni saw. That's why he was asking. That's why this discussion is going on. Anyway.
That verse was 2:9:28 about the spider that covers itself in its own energy.
2:9:28? That's not possible. We're in the 5th chapter.
2:9:28.
We're in the 5th chapter.
Oh, we haven't been to 9.
We haven't been to 9 yet.
I thought somebody said it was
No, I thought you were in
Maybe it's
the
in
same
the
chapter. Yeah, try 256,
Okay.
Or 255. It was just during that time.
Okay.
But it was similar to the one you just brought up. So it's used like 3 times right there.
Oh.
Just the example of the spider.
Okay. I'll look it up.
Oh, Krishna.
Okay then.
Thank you very much.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.